Hey, Brian JT Watts here with another episode of Come Together. Welcome, welcome. We will be talking to Mr. Bernard Péan. I just think you're going to enjoy it. I hope you do. Stay by after the intro. But before we do that, I want to remind you to subscribe and like our channel. We would love for you to do that and set it up for notifications so that you can know every time a show comes out, which is usually on Monday before 5 p.m. Okay, so check out the show. I hope you enjoy this interview with my friend Bernard Péan, and we'll see you. Have a
This is the greatest game of telephone that has ever been played. Someone said the black man doesn't raise his kids or care for his family, and that message is still being told to everyone today. They even have us saying,
We are not a monolith. We have various opinions and thoughts. We are much more than what we are portrayed to be by the media.
even when we are the victims of injustice, we are still portrayed as the perpetrators. When it comes to the black man, there is an intentional plan to discredit the past, arrest the present, and destroy the future.
Something must be done, but nothing will work until we come together. Welcome, viewers. I'm sitting here talking to an old friend, Mr. Bernard Péan. He's a fellow New Yorker, so you know I'm already excited about this interview. And I'm also a college homeboy. So, Bernard, let everybody know who you are and what you're doing right now.
So I'm Bernard Péan from Brooklyn, New York. Right now, I am working on my own company. It's called Centillion Health. Also, there's a part of it called Elliott Equity Group. I'm the chief operating officer for that. And a lot of people say, well, what do they do besides health solutions? What do you really do? Or what does that mean? So I've worked in the past as a chief medical informatics officer. And that's basically digital transformation. Some people might call me a digital interventionist. Some people might call me a physician informaticist. But at the end of the day, we're taking hospitals and different healthcare centers into the new century, meaning we're moving away from paper and all of that, and everything that comes along with that. That's what we do. So I like to tell people I'm in healthcare, but in the technical and business side of healthcare.
Wow, that's big, and I don't think that a lot of people would even think that that is something that needs to be done, but it's definitely something that needs to be done because a lot of people don't realize how much technology has taken over, and how much easier it'll be for people that maybe if they don't have to go somewhere or they can, I have a friend who works in that and told me that there are doctors who can come onto your smart TV and diagnose you from across the world, on the other side of the world.
Well, see, so now you're talking about telehealth and all that comes with it. So you have the thing that's interesting about that, people always say, well, I don't like the fact that, the physician is talking to me through a computer. Think about this. And I always tell people this. When Katrina happened, more people died after the storm than during the storm.
Right.
And why? Because I don't know what medication you're on. I don't know what treatment you were getting. I don't know what illness you were on. I'm just eyeballing it and trying to figure out if that's the best way to do things. And as you know, that doesn't work.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, I kind of understand what it is you're doing because I was doing the same thing in education for a while, trying to get people into an online technology in their school, not using books, just using the internet and things like that. It didn't work as well because most schools don't have the bandwidth to have all their students online.
Exactly.
But that's the idea. And I think most of the things in our world are going that way. So I'm sure that this is definitely going to be something lucrative and something that you won't be stopping anytime soon because technology keeps changing. So it keeps people like you in the loop as long as you can stay up with, all of the changes. So that's great. That's great. I'm always impressed when I hear guys that I went to school with doing something that's relevant. It's
Yeah.
it's big, because when we were in school, and I don't know how other people felt, but when I was in school, I just thought all of us were going to get a job and we'd be okay. We'd do something that was our major. Okay, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna see you. You're gonna be working. We'll be good. But now I'm seeing guys doing big things. People with their own companies, doing things that we didn't even know could be done because they weren't invented then. And that's one of the things I try to tell kids now when I talk to them. If you don't know what you want to be, it might be because it hasn't been invented yet. Things are happening all the time, and we can jump into whatever we want, but we have to get prepared while we're in school. And that's what's going to get us where we want to go.
So what's interesting about what you're saying is that a lot of times people think because I majored in such and such, that's what I have to stay in.
Right.
And to me, it's like I always tell people that, that's the traditional way of thinking, but our world is not traditional now. You have people that are math majors that are running companies. You know what I'm saying?
That's weird for you to say, because I was a math major and I am running a company right now. Wow, then you got real personal right there.
Well, what they have found is that most math majors do well with running companies because we're used to systems.
Right.
But it's like when you think of math, you don't think of that, or you have someone that may be, I don't know, an English major that's doing something totally different than what you. So in other words, my point is just because you go to school for that doesn't mean that you're committed to that. It just shows the employer that you are employable, meaning that you can follow instructions, you can go through this. That doesn't mean that if you don't have a degree, you're not employable, but it just gives them a better way, an easier way to sort of understand what knowledge you should have or might have.
And that's why it's called a discipline. I mean, it disciplines you in an area. And if you can make that discipline common to other areas, then it works. I keep telling people that you have people like Magic Johnson, who was a basketball player, phenomenal basketball player, and you would have him speaking at corporations. Well, why are you having Magic Johnson speak at this corporation? He doesn't know anything about this corporation. No, but he's a winner. He's a champion, and he knows how to do that. And those skills are transferable to other people. If you're building teams, he knows how to work with a team. He knows how to do all of those things. And so there are skills that you will glean from the things that you are disciplined in. And those
absolutely.
That's what we're trying to do. But look, we want to definitely, I definitely want our brothers to hear things like that. Our show, of course, is not only for men, it's for everybody, but it's dedicated to preserving and to exposing the positivity of Black men. And I asked you to be on because I think that of you, and I want to expose you as that, and also to just discuss some issues with you, because I think that there's a lot going on in our society that people don't know about us. There's a lot that they think they know about us as a whole, and it's always hard to talk about people as a whole because there's so many different people. There's so many different personalities, and it seems that for some reason our community does not let us have all of those different personalities and those different parts to us. If you look at if you took any other community, Asian community or the white community, nobody seems to try to put all of them in a box as this is what you do and this is how you operate. But it seems like that for us. Like we're that group that all of us do the same thing. Like on a small scale, Black people don't swim. I don't even know what that means because I've been swimming for years. I've been in swimming classes where there were nothing but Black people. I go to the beach and there's a bunch of Black people in the water. So I'm not getting where that comes from, So there are a lot of things that it's like, this is what you don't do. And this is what you do. And so I want people to see that, our men are strong men. There are men who are financially secure. There are men who are great fathers. There are men who have never sat home and played video games and smoked weed and drank 40s. There's so many things that seems to just be stuck on us. And I don't know if it's just the media. I don't know if it's an intentional plan. I don't know where it's coming from, but I do know that it seeps into our community and we end up saying these things. And that to me makes it worse.
Well, I can't say definitely that I know, but I have a pretty good idea. There's this term called collectivism, which means that if you do something wrong, it reflects all of Black people.
Right.
And they keep looking at us like that because the truth is that it takes effort to know individuals. So it's
Right.
easier for me to take a broad brush and paint it over all Black people.
Right.
And that's how they are. But the other part of it that I think is, I don't know if the word is ubiquitous or insidious, but it's kind of both.
Right.
Because it has to do with supremacy.
Right.
There's not much that we don't know about white history, white people.
Right.
But white people don't have to know about us.
Right.
So I always tell people that honestly, we have an advantage. We know what they're thinking, but they don't know what we're thinking. But, a lot of times people get upset about that. And I'm just like, if you thought that you were better than everyone else,
mm-hmm.
you would expect everyone else to know about you, but you would not expect to know about them.
That's right.
So, it's sort of that same line of thinking as to why, all Black men have been to jail, all Black men have been arrested, all Black men, drink 40s or whatever,
Right. Well, that's odd. That's a good way of looking at it, because I would speak to people about let's say back when we were in school, if somebody was very popular, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I won't say any names, but if somebody was extremely popular on campus, it's true, everybody knows them, but they don't really know the people who know them. They're just popular. They're just doing their thing, and everybody knows who they are, but they don't know the people. Usually that's the case. It's very odd for somebody to know, if somebody who's popular, to know all the people that know them, or to know many of the people that know them. And you're right. So if you're at the top, you're probably the one who gets studied, but you don't have to study the ones who are studying you. And that does give an advantage. That's true. Well, what do you think about some of the things that are going on in our society today? I think we had two things this year that were big, not because they weren't life-changing for all of our community, but they sort of put us on blast this year. One was the Super Bowl. Okay. Super Bowl, I didn't know this when I was younger, but I found out that football is like a religion in America. Okay. And the Super Bowl is the culmination of this big religious experience, because you cannot mess up the Super Bowl and think you're going to have a life in America and they're going to let you keep doing what you do. We all found that out when Justin Timberlake revealed part of Janet Jackson's body on one of the Super Bowl halftime shows. Even though we saw cheerleaders' bodies for years, that was a time when it was like, no, you don't mess with this. This is sacred. So, and even in a world where all of that stuff is kind of common and everything, it was a problem. So for them this year to allow not just an African American halftime show, but hip hop, which is the most urban of all of our art forms, to be center stage and just run the whole halftime show, I looked at it as a chance for hip hop to shine. Now, you're from Brooklyn, I'm from the Bronx. We're close to the same age, so we both grew up watching hip hop evolve from the beginning to whatever it is now. I remember Friday nights in my room, my sister and I, little kids, maybe 3 and 4, with the jams going on in the park right across the street, so loud that we thought we were listening to it in our house. Like, okay,
Yes.
Crazy. And we don't even know what's going on. All we're hearing is throw your hands in the air. We're hearing all the beginnings of rap. And then we watched it progress. How did you feel seeing this? Because a lot of people think, oh, that's not important. Oh, I'm not involved in that, this, and the other. How did you feel seeing something like this happen on this world stage?
So first of all, I thought that it was interesting who the rappers were. Because usually they get rappers that are middle of the road, like white people. But the truth is that white people also love the gangster rappers.
Oh, no doubt.
But and my thing is, what I liked about it was the fact that they did what they did and they were cognizant of not doing anything out of the box.
Right.
They didn't. So I liked it personally. A lot of people were making jokes that, all of them were like for people our age, not for young people.
Right.
But the truth is that I thought it was the beginning of something. And even though the NFL to me is very hypocritical,
right?
Because to me, people don't understand what they say is the NFL is a brand and they do not let you mess with that brand. But they also realize that, 78% of the NFL are, made up of Black people.
Right.
Or of minorities. So I feel that it was a good business move on their part. Now, what gets to me about Roger Goodell is a lot of times he does things to appease the crowd.
Right.
Like he's like somewhat of a politician. And people don't realize that he's the commissioner and he is the person that represents the team owners.
Right, exactly.
The team owners that represent the National Football League. It's not as though he represents the team, and people get that mixed up.
Right.
But if my salary was $44 million and I had to report to those guys,
right,
I probably would do my best to do what they want me to do.
Right.
Because you're getting the salary. So I think it was a lot of people, as I said, some people loved it, some people complained, but I think a lot of the complaints were, about it not being something that we do all the time. But I'm like, look, you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. You're not going to be able to swallow it whole. So,
no, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, this is, I think what happens for us, and I think a lot of us look at problems. And as a mathematician, when I teach math to kids, I say to them, stop trying to do this whole equation at one time. You're looking at it all as this big, insurmountable task. Do the parts you know, and that will lead you into the parts that you don't know. There's only 4 operations in math for the rest of your life: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. If you can do those 4 things, you can solve any of these equations as long as you do them in the right order and at the right time. And I think that that's the kind of look that we need to look at. If we're the people who are striving to climb up, then we have to take some chances. And sometimes you're going to have to get involved even when it seems that these people are using you. You don't want to continue to be used, but if somebody says, if the NFL says, hey, we want to attract more minority watchers, viewers, so we're going to put on this hip hop halftime show, you can say, no, you're not going to use me for that. Well, why not? That's a positive use where you're going to be able to do something over and over. You're going to appeal to customers now. Now, a lot of younger people might not even remember who Dr. Dre is. And the smart thing they did was use one of the most popular rappers of now, Kendrick Lamar, pull him in to show you, yes, we embrace this guy right here, and show the NFL how great this could be, because the NFL knows it could be okay, but they didn't know how great. They didn't know that this video would be being watched over and over and over and over, and that people might start to ask, hey, we need some more of that, So it's a challenge sometimes for us to see that these things might help push us ahead. Of course, those who are not fans of hip hop were not fans of the halftime show, and I get that. Just like a lot of people weren't fans the year after the Janet Jackson fiasco, when Paul McCartney it was one of the most lowest halftime shows that I had seen, and not because Paul McCartney's not good, but because we had been going on a trend a certain way, and then all of a sudden you were like, okay, now pull it back, So it was a problem, but we've had people before. We've had Michael Jackson on there. We've had all this stuff happen before, and I think it's good that we're stepping into different roles. What's a problem for me is that it seems that on the field, the NFL is still pulling all kinds of racist tricks and things like that. We're not seeing coaches represented in our community. We're not seeing owners. We're not seeing players being treated as if they are valuable to the team. I'm wondering what it's going to take for us to get the kind of help we need. I know that if a player breaks a leg or hurts themselves, that the drugs that are available to these guys are way superior to anything I would get at the clinic down the street or the hospital or the emergency room, even if I got hurt. But where is the help for the brothers from our community for finance or for therapy, mental anguish, all of the things that come with this sport? What do you think is the issue there? What do you think is the problem, and what do we have to do to push for those kind of things to happen?
So before you spoke about how within the Black community, how we all are thought, to drink a 40, smoke weed, all these different things. But the truth is that people are not recognizing that there's diversity within the African American race. Right. Everybody thinks it's all the same. So I think that what ends up happening is when you come from a mindset that you don't need them, they need you, speaking of the owners or the NFL, they are holding themselves back from a revenue source that is beyond what they would believe. Because I've always said that if they were to lower the price of tickets,
right,
and you could take your family, the stadiums would be even more crowded than they are right now. Right. People would buy the merchandise, but they're thinking of the almighty dollar, but they're not really looking at the people that support them as the reason that they are where they are. Mm-hmm. I've always said that if a rich person is not prejudiced, is not one that holds it against, like, I don't want Black people,
right,
buying my, they're missing out.
Right.
So there's a book called The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, and she talks about how some people are willing to, if they realize it's going to help you,
right,
they're willing to suffer too. So, she brings up a thing where they had a pool, Black people got in the pool. The next day they filled the pool with dirt. So then nobody has a pool.
Right.
Nobody can enjoy that. So I think it's the same thing. Like, for example, with the NFL now, the Denver Broncos are, they're forming a group. I know Robert F. Can't think of his last name, but the tech billionaire who went to Morehouse and paid for everybody's tuition. So he's forming a group, and I want to say someone else is forming a group. I don't think it's P. Diddy, but there's someone else. And basically the NFL is not realizing once again, because it's the old guard. Once again, you're hurting yourself from making even more money. Right. The NFL makes close to $9 billion with a B, $1 billion a year.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. But if you allow it to be more inclusive, you have the Jacksonville owner, Shaw, who's one of the owners, and they count him as a minority. And then I think the Dolphins, you have Ariza. Okay. But I'm saying for the most part, they're not saying that because you're not a reflection of society, you're missing out on something bigger.
Right.
And I think the hard part is and this is just me talking in theory, because to make it happen would be much more difficult. The hard part is things like all of these awards that we get, whether it's the ESPYs, whether it's the Grammy, Oscar, Tony. At the end of the day, it's somebody's opinion.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's a bunch of people that probably don't look like you and me deciding on what would be the best thing to do.
Right.
And that's a common issue in America, where men are making decisions for women, white people are making decisions for black people, straight people are making decisions for gay people, and we could go on with that. So to me, I think at the end of the day, there has to be a sense of us doing our own thing, or not looking to what is traditional for that to be our validation.
Well, do you think that time is coming? Do you think it's getting closer, or do you think we still got a long way to go?
So there's a school of thought that thinks that, things are getting better. If you were to ask me personally, I think things are different. I don't know that they're better. I think that they're smarter about how they go about doing things, how they keep things from us. It's sort of one of those things that whenever you hear something, you look at each other like, you know what it is. You don't even want to say it anymore, but you know what it is.
Right. That's definitely true. Now, I'm of the thought that there are plenty of us, not all of us, and not even the majority of us, making more money now. There are more of us in business for ourselves. There are more of us rising to levels that possibly were not available before, but there's still a line that can't be crossed. And I talked to a friend of mine, and we came up with the fact that for every Black person that gets rich, there's a white person getting wealthy from it. And that's seemingly an issue, because we have not gotten to a point, even our richest people aren't wealthy, and there's no room for them to get there. You can see people like Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal and even Oprah Winfrey and all of these people who make insane money, but there's somebody behind them that's really making money from them, and it seems like that's the reason to let somebody in. Okay.
Man, let me tell you, when they used to have that song, I Want to Be Like Mike, I would always tell people, I want to be the person that pays Mike.
Right, exactly. There you go. But that's not even something people think about. They don't even think about the fact that, wait, somebody's paying this guy a percentage of what's going on, and it's a big thing. And I'm not into hookups. Okay, I keep trying to explain this concept to people, and I want especially our young brothers to understand this, because everybody's always, even in my classroom, Mr. Watts, hook me up. You don't want a hookup. Okay, a hookup means I'm giving you something you don't deserve. And when I give you something you don't deserve, things are usually not going to work out well for the long term, because you're not prepared for this. You're not skilled at this. You're just in a position where you don't belong. So even though the immediate reward might come, it's not going to be good in the long term. What I want is to put people on. Now, put on is a total different thing from a hookup, because when I put you on, that means you are skilled and ready for this position. You just are not in a place where you can get connected. And I'm connecting you where you need this connection. And to me, that's much more valuable than a hookup, because now when people ask you to do certain things or to perform tasks, yes, I can do that. And I think that a lot of people looked at affirmative action as a hookup instead of a put on. If we're putting people on that you haven't been looking at, or you didn't know were there, then it's valuable for both sides. Everybody benefits, but a hookup, it's only beneficial for one side and only for that person for a little while. So I think that, like I said, it's not better. We just have a lot more happening now. But the racism and everything seems to be more prevalent. The problem I see is that our young people, for the most part, aren't seeing the issues that we see, because they haven't been through it. Our parents were in civil rights era. So we got
Mhm.
a mouthful, an earful, all of that of what that was. Some of the kids now that I'm teaching, they might be 2 generations below me, and they're disconnected from that at all. They're like, no, what's wrong with the world? I can make money. I'm seeing, they see Black people all the time doing stuff, making money, and they're not concerned with racism or this, none of that. And in school, they're still friends with everybody. It's a lot better of an atmosphere now. When I was in school, I went to Black schools. I didn't in Harlem where I went to school, there was one white kid in my class for like a week, and then he was gone. And so,
Yeah.
never saw him again. So I think he went to Bronx Science or Brooklyn Tech or something, and he never came back. So, I didn't have that interaction. But in the places where I teach now, that interaction is there. And so because young people are usually not racist towards each other, in school, then people think everything is okay. And I think that it's hard to show them, especially the young brothers, what's going on and what you need to be cognizant of. What is a cure for that? How can we let them know that there's a responsibility to the community and that there are things you need to learn about the past so that your present and your future can be different?
Well, it's funny when you were talking about Michael Jordan, Shaq, and Oprah. We always talk about raising the ceiling, but we forget that we also have to raise the floor.
Ah,
And I think that is where the disconnect is, because we think that, we'll just go to Michael and be like, yo, hook me up.
right.
We'll go to Oprah and say, yo, hook me up. Not realizing, like you said, they need to put you on so that you can do your thing, so that you can shine. Another thing that you made me think of is a lot of times they say it is better to be unprepared than it is to be underprepared. Because what ends up happening is when you're underprepared, I think I'm ready, you put me on, and I'm not ready. But that's worse.
Right.
That's because that means you didn't understand the assignment.
Right.
You did not read and research and prepare.
Right.
So, but I think a lot of times and another thing you mentioned, it is by design that these young people don't know about the past.
Yeah, that's true.
That these young people think that the slavery was, like the Titanic. Everybody was just getting on, like, hey, Jim, we're going to America.
Right.
But I think that it's by design. I think, honestly, it's up to the parents.
Mhm.
We come from an oral tradition in Africa, right? And we still hold true to that.
Right.
There's nothing like, that relative that knows how to tell a story. Everyone gets everybody's attention. And I think it's the same thing now, because we can't depend on the school system.
Right.
We can't depend on the church.
Right.
All of these things are institutions that indoctrinate us to think a certain way.
Right.
So I think it's much more important for us to, like you as a position as a teacher, you're in the school system and you're around these young kids. Sometimes, you might have to drop a few nuggets, boop, boop, let them like, huh? What's he talking about?
Right.
Things like that. Because the thing about it is it's hard for us to really change the system while being within the system.
That's true. That's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
I had a teacher like that. Richard Williams, when I was in high school, he was a history teacher. And I hated it. I mean, all through elementary school, I was like, this is not my thing. But, I have to do it. So I remember the first day in his class, it's like, who is this guy? He's really into this history thing. And he's walking around. It was the first time I had a teacher that was like moving around. It was my first day of high school. I had gotten transferred. I was supposed to be going to Brooklyn Tech. Went there for 2 days, and I was like, I can't ride this train 2 hours every day. And they late accepted me into the medical program at A. Philip Randolph. So I go there, and I don't get to go to class all day because they're filling out forms. But when they finally send me, it's like late in the day, and I go to this guy's class, and I'm amazed at just his oratorical skills, just the way he's speaking. And everybody else had been in the summer program with him, so they are used to him. I'm the only one in there like, wow, who is this guy? And he's calling me Mr. Watts. First time in my life I'm hearing that in 9th grade, Mr. Watts. And I'm like, oh, my dad is here? Like, I don't even know what's going on, you know? And he told us that there was a curriculum for him to teach us. He was not going to teach us that garbage. And he was going to teach us something real. Now, I can't even say that out loud in my classroom because I'd be God, you know, but this man made sure that we knew who we were and that we knew where we came from, and we knew that we could advance and do all kinds of things. And I mean, and it was historical. He was pointing to things. He was taking us back. He was making us research, read, and do all of these things. But it was available for him to do, and he was so good at it that you couldn't take it away from him. You know, even if you saw him on the street, I saw him on 3rd Avenue one day. I'm with my mother, and I'm telling you, he made a bunch of us men, because he walks up to me. He's in his suit and tie, and I'm, you know, just a little 14-year-old boy wearing whatever we wore then with my mom, and he walks up to me, not my mom, Mr. Watts. I'm like, Mr. Williams? And he's like, is this your mother? Yes, hello, I'm Mr. Williams. I was like, what is going on? I never got this kind of respect before, you know? And so not only did he teach us the stuff, but he showed it in his image towards us and made us feel like, you know, okay, yeah, I am Mr. Watts. Okay, yeah, that's correct. I can do this. And it was so great that I even joined the history club. I don't like history, but I wanted to be around these guys so much that, you know, I started to do things like that. And I think that they've sort of shut it down where it's hard for teachers to even be that kind of person now. Yes, they want the representation in the schools. They want the teachers to look sort of like the dynamic of the kids. You want Hispanic teachers and Black teachers and maybe a few minority representations in administration and all of that. But I feel like they're pulling the power out of it now. You know, you're there, but what can you actually do? And the interest isn't the same. You know, once he piqued our interest, we were interested in learning more. It seems like now, because of the media, the intense media that's around these kids, we watch TV when we went home. These kids are watching stuff all day. Their phones give them whatever information, whatever indoctrination, whatever people want them to know all day. So it's really not the same as when we were young, because that you can't get that, you can't pull their attention the same way you could back then.
Well, you know, the funny thing about that is you make me think of Malcolm X when he said that most of us are saying we want equality, but the truth is that we really want acceptance. And see, what ends up happening is with all of this trying to show diversity, they put us in positions to appease us.
Right.
But the hard part is when you're in that position, they make sure you don't shine too much.
Right.
You know, so it's one of those things that, you know, politically you can see what happens, you know, like they'll choose someone politically so you could see a face up there that looks like yours. Right. But and they feel that we are emotional enough to let that be enough for us to say, yes, we'll vote for that person.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is that the thing about your story with Mr. Williams is that he did what he had to do regardless, because they say most of what children learn is caught and not taught.
Right.
So you were peeping how he was treating people, and you knew that he cared about you.
Right. And
the shame of it is all these things are coming to mind, Brian. So I'm not trying to be. So there was this the book that Jawanja Kunjufu wrote, talking about how in his book he talks about how Black males around the 3rd grade, you know, when they're 9 or 10, that's when usually, they start losing interest.
Right.
Now, imagine if you had a Mr. Williams in the third grade.
Wow. Right.
That would have made a much bigger difference.
Right.
And my thing is, even in the beginning when you were like, we all went to school, we were just expected to have work, and we thought it was going to be like that. But that's because that's how we were taught to think.
Right. Exactly.
We were taught to think that way, and like Black history, it always starts at slavery.
Right.
And they always say, "Oh, we brought slaves from Africa." No, you didn't.
No. You
brought people from Africa, and you enslaved them. And let's be real, you were smart about who you enslaved to where. I'll give you a quick example. Like in South Carolina, a lot of those people are from Sierra Leone,
right,
which are the same people that are in the Bahamas and Bermuda.
Right.
They were on their way to Jamaica, some of them, and it crashed, and that's how it happened for Bermuda. But for the Bahamas, it's the same. But my point was that they brought them to South Carolina, not just because they were willy-nilly. They knew that South Carolina, what they call low country, had the same agrarian topography as it did in Sierra Leone.
Right.
So that means that they brought these people over for their knowledge.
Right.
They try to make it seem, they've watered it down. As much as we know today, what we know is watered down.
Right.
So you can imagine what the kids know today is even more watered down.
Right. Right. And I'm glad you're on that topic, because this is what I want our young brothers and sisters to know. We don't know everything. I'm a lifelong learner. That's something that I'm committed to. A young lady who actually lives in Brooklyn right now, she taught me something that I didn't know about exactly what you're talking about. That the slaves in America, when the white men went to Africa to get these people to be slaves, they didn't just go gather a bunch of people. They gathered people who knew how to do what they needed to be done. And I was like, what? So when we were talking about, I know the crops, tobacco and cotton and blue indigo and all of these different things, I said, how did these people know where to plant this? And so they're like, that's what the Africans knew. It wasn't what the white men knew. So they went and found people who did those things and brought them over. And I was like, wait, you're telling me that these were the educated people they went and got? And I'm like, yes, educated in agriculture and all of this stuff. It wouldn't have been a crime to take people that nobody wanted, or workers, just laborers. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have been as bad of a crime. But they were taking the people who were educated on it. And so not only did they steal a workforce, they stole an administration. They stole
intellectual property.
Oh, right, exactly. So it's amazing, and that changed my whole. This was just 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, that I found this out, and I was like, "Hold on." That just enraged me again. Like, wow. So even the stuff that I learned that snuck through, I'm not saying it wasn't taught to me, but I didn't catch all of that, and so it's a lot that I think that our people right now are missing. And I think that it's a plan to keep our young people, and especially our young men, down, because regardless of the fight that seems to be going on between Black women and Black men right now, you cannot survive without both. Okay?
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen. We need each other. And I think that it's an intentional effort to keep one of us down, or to keep us arguing with each other, so that we don't pay attention to us getting ahead. And then it creates a syndrome where, there's no togetherness. So what they've said about us, like they say, like what's the Michael Jackson song, and the lie becomes the truth. You know what I'm saying? It's just how it is. And so I think that there's some intense education that needs to happen. I don't think that the school systems will ever get to it, because I learned when I was doing my master's that American schools were not made to educate the masses. they were made to make better Americans, which is exactly what they're doing. You know,
Yeah.
they're indoctrinating people and making them Americans, and this is what you need. This is what works for America. So where do you see us going as far as being able to educate and put a real foundation in for kids that are elementary, middle, and high school right now? Is there a chance for us to catch them and save them, or to educate them to a knowledge of all of this? Or is it like, are we at a loss?
No, you know what? My thing is, it's always been shown that we are a resilient people.
Okay.
We've always been put at a loss, but for some reason, we just like, rise again.
Right.
So I think when it comes to education, we have to stop expecting school systems to do it.
Right.
Like some people look at, "Whew, I'm so glad my child gets to spend 8 hours away so that I can have time to myself."
Right.
But in the meantime, while that child is away, they're being indoctrinated.
Right.
To the point where you hear little girls complaining about, their hair or their nose or their lips. And I'm like, how did you at 8 years old, what do you know about this?
Right.
Or you even hear people, because of this education system, because we're willing to sit back and be taught and not research and learn and read for ourselves, like, have you ever heard anyone else from another race say there are no good men out there? No other race says that, So I'm saying, it's gonna take a you and a me,
Right.
to really talk to people, as many people as we can, outside of school, outside of church, outside of any type of structure that is full of indoctrination. And people will say, well, what do you mean we're indoctrinated? We're taught that certain things have to be done a certain way.
Right.
And we're taught to think a certain way. And if you think outside of that, you are ostracized. Because if you think about it, when we talk about being American, we're not talking about unity.
Right.
We're not talking about bringing communities together. We're talking about uniformity. Everyone doing the same thing. Like this whole gentrification thing. The reason it upsets me is when I went back to my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and by the way, you need to start hanging out with more people from Brooklyn because I see they keep teaching you things. But
I'm not, you know what? I can't even deny it now, man. I can't. Go ahead.
But the thing is that I was upset because the first time I ever tasted Papa John's or anything like that was outside of New York. They didn't have that in New York.
Right.
Like what? New York was made up of mom and pop businesses. Right. And I keep telling people the good side of gentrification is, hey, we can go to the park in Bushwick today and, not look over our shoulders or step on a crack bottle. Okay, fine. But what made New York, New York is no longer New York. I could go to this neighborhood and say, oh, this is the Dominican neighborhood, or, oh, this is the Haitian, this is the Jamaican, that diversity is what made New York, New York.
Right.
Now, when I went back home, I saw a Starbucks. They had a Target. I was so sad. I was like, yo, what is this? And all of the place have to have a Starbucks. Right. All of the place have to have a Menchie's. All of the place has to, I'm like, dude, what happened? See, diversity is deeper than color.
Yes.
Diversity means that when I go to Seattle, I'm not going to get the same experience as when I go to LA, right, or when I go to New York or Baltimore. But now what they're trying to do with this gentrification is I go to Seattle, it looks just like LA, it looks just like Baltimore, it looks just like DC.
That's right.
And so to me, I think that helping the kids understand the bigger picture, like a lot of these things are by design. I used to get upset. There was a time, if you remember, when all of the movies were like Boys in the Hood South Central. Like it was like every time you looked at the screen, we were on crack.
Right.
We were killing somebody.
Right.
We were,
gangs,
and I'm just,
all of that, yeah.
but what I realized is that the people that are accepting what you bring and they say, okay, we'll take it to production, we'll distribute it and all that. Those are the people that are making the decisions as to what we see, as to what we're around. So you come like the guy who did Hamilton, Manuel something.
Lin-Manuel,
Lin-Manuel. He had a script that he had brought to the people, and they said they were looking through and they finished reading the script. He's like, this is not Hispanic enough. They were like, what do you mean? He's like, there are no drug dealers, there's no, prostitutes in the corner.
Wow.
So to me, that's why this whole thing with and as I keep talking about uniformity, they have a way of thinking, and we, the viewers, are not realizing that it's not, let me say, a Will Packer or these different people's faults.
Right.
Is that the machine that's behind them is telling them, no, we don't want a love story.
Right.
We want to see some, we want to hear you call the guys N's, and I want you to call the women's B's.
Right.
That's going to make, and I was like, what? Like they talk about, it's not black enough. Like, you're telling me?
Exactly. And the funny thing is, even when the movie is being casted and people go to act, American Black actors are not being put in these movies because they're not Black enough, and they'll get somebody from England or somewhere else who can act that way, the way that they think Blackness is, the way they wanted to see it portrayed. And you're right, it's been a problem for a long time. And I think that getting our own is important. And I think that we've shown that we can do things on our own. It was one of the joys of me watching the second Coming to America. I knew it wasn't going to be the first one. I mean, the first one wasn't the first one right away, but the fact that they had control over it and all of that was a big thing. I think that a lot of us still have a feeling that white is right. Until you get accepted by them, it's not good enough. And that's why we have problems with, people getting awards and people being EGOTs and, getting all of these things, because that's what makes it in America. And we have been told that unless you get this, you're not really, a part of America, or you're not successful. So let's get into a small piece of this. I don't want to get into all of this. I want to sort of summarize, because I don't want this to be the bane of my existence. And this is really for real. I really want to say this for the young brothers out here, and I want to get your opinion on this. There is a fight between Black women and Black men right now. It's been that for a while, and because there's been a big movement for women, which I agree with, that there are a lot of things that women have been cheated out of and that they haven't gotten, and this, and the other. That I think that sometimes people are fighting for things that they don't realize they might not go about it the right way. Put it that way. They might not go about it in a way that's going to be constructive for all.
Yes.
So recently, of course, with the whole debacle at the Oscars, the Oscars were being produced by Will Packard, who is Black. It was being hosted by 3 women, 2 of which were Black, and a host of Black people who had been boycotting since 2016, especially, namely, Will and Jada Smith, were in attendance, and Will was supposed to get the award for Best Actor. Now, that alone was the second thing that I was going to say was supposed to be big this year, as far as African Americans in entertainment. Because of a joke that is controversial, a lot of people think that it was the worst joke in the world, or it was terrible. And I don't even think it was Chris Rock's worst joke. In fact, I didn't see a big problem with it, especially not to other comic actors. But I can leave that part alone as well. How do you view the priority between protecting your woman and assaulting another black man? Now, this, to me, protecting my woman could have been a whole bunch of things, you know, and I don't want any of my students, my friends, my mentees, anybody who I speak to ever think that I condone violence when someone has said something that you don't like or said something that might be offensive. We grew up in a time of mother jokes that were insane. I mean, they were making them up as they went. Your mama this, your mama that. Like, oh, they were so funny sometimes that people couldn't even be offended. It was like, dang, that's, you know what I'm saying?
Pretty good.
But if everybody got slapped from a mother joke, and I'm sure you want to defend your mom, we would have been in some serious trouble. So, I mean, what is your take on all of that? Just that part of it. I mean, I think that a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and you even heard somebody like Tiffany Haddish, like, yeah, I'm glad. I wish some man would do that for me. That sort of rubbed me the wrong way, because it's sending a message. Even if you don't want to be a role model, you are. And you're sending a message to people to say, hey, that's what you need to do. So what is your take on that?
So I'm going to be I'm going to be like Switzerland in this, and I'm not going to take any side, but
right.
But I am going to I'll address all three of those, because the first one, or the last one you mentioned, was Tiffany. Well, to me, I was disappointed that she said that, because to me, that's very toxic.
Right.
You know, first of all, you're exposing your man. If you think that a black man could go around slapping people, if Will Smith had done that to a white person, we would have seen the difference.
Right.
And to me, Will Smith slapping another black man, I feel that was, like, people say, well, you know, Will did not have to. Why does Will have to answer for the race? So I'm not even going there. But I am saying, within our race, a slap is much more offensive than a punch.
Right.
And an open hand. And you see, he brought it back like this and smacked it. So I'm saying, to me, that you not only disrespected Chris, but you also disrespected yourself.
Right.
Because you're slapping someone that looked like you. And of course, people will say, well, you know, Chris should not have come out of his mouth. Well, I feel like this: the offense did not equal the punishment.
Exactly.
You know, I think there are many other ways he could have done that. And lastly, when it comes to protecting the thing that's funny about relationships, and that I'm learning, is that your relationship is very much a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So you could love someone, or someone could love you and say, I love you, but they keep abusing you.
Right.
And you're like, that brand of love, that's not what I want.
Right.
But if you feel differently about yourself, you're going to allow that to continue happening. So to me, protection is beyond physical.
Right.
How am I protecting you emotionally?
Right.
How am I protecting you psychologically, mentally, financially, romantically?
Right.
You know, for a woman to think that the only way you're protecting her is by hitting someone else. I mean, honestly, you do that, you're going to end up shot. You're going to end up beat up. You don't know what you do. Right. I think at the end of the day, it is about violence, but I think it's also about respect of another human being.
Right. Right.
You know,
definitely.
Someone says something, and I'm not even going into my opinion about the joke and all that.
Right.
But, you know, to me, someone says something, that's like somebody going around the street and, you know, saying, nah, poo poo, but you're going to sit here and beat up on the person?
Right. I mean,
And to me, when you go to an award show, that always happens. And
right,
I've heard like jokes that are told, and I'm just like, oh, I can't believe he went there.
right. There were jokes
So
told that night like that on the same couple, and so
yes,
it was
yes.
very odd. I think that we have started to pick our battles now, and I think that people are not understanding that the battle or the fight for blacks to be considered equal and to be respected as such is your main fight as a black person. You might have others, but there's no way for you to let go of that. I try to explain to people who are in whatever group, whatever social group you're in. If you're a black person, then you still have to hold on to this struggle, because this is the struggle that's going to define you in all of those groups. No matter what other group you're in, if you're fighting to be for women's equality, you have to realize that if you win women's equality, you'll still be a black woman. So they'll still treat you as a black person. You can't let go of the black struggle, because that part is still going to define you. And I think we've gotten to a point now where we're so polarized that we just forget that. And so people choose sides on their smaller issues. And I'm not saying that these issues are not important. I'm saying you can't let go of our community as a whole. That still has to stay intact.
So what you bring up is intersectionality.
Basically, yes.
Where they say that, you are more than just one issue.
Right.
And also another thing, people are talking about, I'm Team Will, I'm Team Chris. It's like everybody lost.
Right.
Everybody lost.
There were no winners that night.
There were no winners, because to me, like recently, I read yesterday that he resigned from the academy.
Right.
So to me, I'm just like, you want your man to protect you, but did you protect your man?
Oh, question I've been asking, yes.
Because to me, I think most women, and no judgment on Jada, most women would be like, babe, what are you doing?
Right.
No, it's okay.
Right.
We'll handle it. Like that article that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote, and he said that we don't realize that act was very misogynistic.
Right.
Sort of
against
like
what these women are fighting for. Right.
You are, let me stand up and let me walk up there and do this because you can't take care of yourself. There's so many messages that I think we miss out, because to me, honestly, my heart goes out to Chris, because people are always going to remember him as the comedian that got slapped. His kids are going to look at him like, my daddy got slapped on national TV. And if he goes to a school where you have kids like you and I, the kids better not ever make a joke, because I'm going to talk about your daddy getting slapped.
Right. No question.
So to me, I'm just like, Will, yes, he did that. He won, but then he talked about it being a vessel of love. And I think as beautiful as his speech was, I feel like it was rehearsed.
Well, I mean, it was just like listening to a pastor who was involved in something sexually deviant the night before, whatever. You're like, okay, that was good, but dude, I know you. You know what I'm saying? Or you just did something to show the opposite of that. So it's kind of hard. And I think it's a situation that we have to resolve. I know a lot of people are sick of hearing about it, but I think that this is not like one of those things that people are just using to keep in the mainstream, but it's something that hasn't been resolved. And so it's hard because there's so many issues. I think it's the first celebrity issue that I actually felt personally involved in, because it was the community. It was like, man, we really got something bad going on here. And then like D.L. Hughley said, one person's trauma met another person's trauma, and it was bad. And so it's an issue that really, I think, needs to be addressed. But I think our young men and women need to hear from us on the real deal and not take on those characteristics, because that's going to be a serious problem.
And I think when we were talking about intersectionality, here is a black man that is worth millions.
Right.
smacking another black man worth millions.
Right.
If you have that on the corner, it's not going to be the same result.
No, not even close. Not even
It's not
close.
going to be the same result. Like
That's
I'm
exactly right.
saying, you have to realize and put it into context. This is Will Smith smacking Chris Rock.
Right.
This is not, Bernard smacking someone,
Right.
or,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like a nobody smacking another nobody.
Right.
So I mean, young people think that they can do that, and it's just like I remember when Iverson came to the league.
Right.
He was clean cut and everything, and then all of a sudden he had tattoos all up his neck and stuff like that.
Right.
I tell young people all the time, he has a job that's going to pay him millions.
Right.
Here you come with tattoos on your neck, tattoos down to your knuckles, and you're trying to find a job. It's two different things.
Right. Right.
You
have to look at the person, where they are, what they do, how it works for them. You can't just emulate them, especially if you haven't created anything for yourself. You have to check all of that out. That's definitely true. Well, look, man, I enjoyed this. I love speaking to you all the time for many years now. Even in college, you had sort of the big brother vibe for me. So this is very good for me to pull you on and discuss this. Definitely probably get back to you, because I mean, we probably have a lot of stuff to talk about, and as more things come up, I'm sure that we will be getting back to you. But thanks for coming on, letting my viewers know who you are. If they want to get in touch about your work or things that you're doing, is there a way for them to contact you?
They can contact me at bernard.payan at Centillion Health. Okay. And we also have a website, centillionhealth.com.
Okay, I'll check that out.
But I want to say thank you for having me, because my thing is that big brother, little brother vibe. I've always teased you about being from the Bronx, but, but I mean, for me, I see you doing things and you have a heart for young people, and that makes a big difference. And I'm so appreciative of you having me.
No problem. No problem. Well, we'll definitely get back to you soon, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Much love.
Hey, I'd like to thank you so much for watching the show this week. I'd like to ask you to remember, if you have not, to subscribe to our channel and to like our channel and set it up for notifications. Listen, we really want to get these messages out. I think there are great discussions that people need to hear and also need to be involved in. So if you think there is someone who should be on Come Together, let us know. Hit us up and let me know who you think should be on the show, and tell me how to get in touch with them, and we'll try to get them on. Okay? I want you to have a great week, and we'll see you again next week on Come Together.